How do you find the strength to persevere as an entrepreneur? It comes down to two words: mental toughness. We're going to dig into this and a lot more with our special guest today. Hi, I am Tim Fitzpatrick with Rialto Marketing. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am really excited to have with me today Matt Phillips from Pro Athlete Advantage. Matt, thanks for taking the time and welcome.
Man, pumped to be here, Tim. This is awesome. So glad we connected a month ago or so, and now get to take the next step forward and do this. This is going to be great.
Yes, it's amazing what happens when you start to network with people, right?
Right.
You start to develop relationships you never thought you would. So yes, I think it was Eric Evanstad that introduced us.
It was.
Yes.
It's one of those things. I mean, it's all about who you surround yourself with, right? So
yep.
Good people know other good people. And when Eric made that introduction to you, I'm like, I gotta meet this guy just because I trust Eric so much. So
yeah, well, I felt the same way, and I loved our conversation. And I appreciate you jumping on because I know you're going to offer a ton of value here. Before we get into things, tell us a little bit more about, your background and Pro Athlete Advantage, what you're doing to help folks.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you kind of the short story of where the name of my company came from and how I progressed to this point. But Pro Athlete Advantage, obviously you're like, oh, does he work with athletes? Well, yes, I've got one side of my business. I work with professional athletes, but most of what I do is working with entrepreneurs and business owners and kind of those hard chargers. But the name really comes from my athletic background, as you can imagine. So I had the great fortune of playing Division I college baseball. I had then an opportunity to go play professionally overseas in Austria's Bundesliga, their first league, for a little while. So the name Pro Athlete Advantage comes from my pro athlete baseball experience overseas. And, my career, actually, I went to Creighton University in Omaha, graduated there, ended up going to grad school at University of Virginia to get my master's of accountancy, of all things, right? Don't judge me, Tim. Don't judge me. I'm a recovering CPA, but
there you go.
But no, so my career path after college and baseball was done took me actually down the audit route. So I began my career with Ernst & Young, now EY. They've rebranded, and in Kansas City, Missouri, and then a 3-year international assignment in Zurich, Switzerland. And then when we moved back from Switzerland, I worked and consulted for numerous Fortune 500 companies, and everything from accounting to operations to finance, helping outsource jobs. I do a bunch of kind of unique operational type work for companies. And it was one of those things, Tim, where I was always the kind of guy in the corporate world, like looking for the next thing. And I knew there was like a bigger impact that I could make. There was something like different I should be doing than sitting in that cubicle or sitting in that office and kind of being in that environment. And so, just over the years, it started to kind of formulate me looking and paying attention to what is supposed to be next. And I was always this big, passionate, like leadership guy, right? If there was a leadership class offered at one of my companies, like I was there. I was signed up. I was about how do I develop myself? How do I develop my team? How do I position myself to ultimately be successful? And at that point, climb the corporate ladder, right? Well, I remember one day, and actually connected with this woman, but I was in this training with this woman named Naomi who was leading it. And she was talking about leadership, and we were doing some pretty cool exercises. And I remember sitting in the room and watching her, and I had this thought of, why can't I do that? Like, why can't I be her standing up in front of the room, teaching people about leadership, about development? And that was kind of the start, if you will, of my recognition of like, oh my gosh, like this is the path that I believe like I'm positioned to take. And I actually met with Naomi, 5-6 months ago. I actually reached out and I told her that story. I said, you, Naomi, were the inspiration for me starting like what I do today. So that was really kind of the precipice of this path, and that led me to launch Pro Athlete Advantage and going on this leadership path and this business coaching path. And now I get to wake up literally every single day and do what I love, and it's working with entrepreneurs, working with business owners, working with other C-suite executives and companies, also working with professional athletes on and helping them from a business coaching perspective, from a leadership perspective, but with one like very key difference than a lot of other coaches, because the one true differentiator, which we're here to talk about today, Tim,
absolutely,
that I've seen in athletics, I've seen in business, I've seen in entrepreneurship, the differentiator is this concept of mental toughness, right? It's mindset, it's what's going on in between the ears that will determine your level of success or failure. And so that's why I get so fired up of like, yeah, we can talk metrics, we can talk numbers, we can talk process, but we got to figure out what's going on inside and remove some of those roadblocks so you can ultimately get to where you want to go in your business and other areas of life.
Yeah, I'm super excited to dig into this. And thank you for sharing that. I mean, as most of us know, that the entrepreneurial path is not a straight line. And frankly, the path to becoming an entrepreneur is not a straight line, as you just shared. So it's always interesting to see and hear about people's experiences because there's always something to learn from it. So I think a lot of folks that start their own business are very similar to you, where they're coming from a corporate background. They're fleeing that corporate culture. For you, I think this would be great to share is what was the most difficult challenge that you faced transitioning from corporate to being a business owner?
It's a great question. I could go so many different directions. And one that really sticks out to me, there's two that I'll mention. One is this employee mindset versus ownership mindset and entrepreneur mindset. And there's a pretty significant difference where, depending on the role you're at and how big your company is from like a corporate perspective, right? There's a certain responsibility that you have, but because you're part of such like a bigger engine, you don't really like own the whole process end to end.
Yes.
So it's easy, I think, or it can be easy in the corporate world to like point your fingers at other people and be like, well, he or she, should be doing that. That's not my role. And when you make that transition to like owning your own business, or maybe being even part of a smaller organization, like this shift has to occur of like, no, I own the business. Like, this is my business. I'm not part of something. I'm the owner of that business. And it shifts everything of decisions you make, money you spend. You have to just become more diligent and really take this ownership of like, no, I have to do this. Somebody else may be doing it, but like doing the actual activity, but I'm the one that's in charge. And I've got to have that mentality when I approach everything that I do. So that was a big shift for me. I remember pretty early on, because we talk about this ownership, right? And back in the corporate world, it'd be like, oh, there's the sales team. Like, the sales team's doing their thing. Well, in my business now, like, sales is the lifeblood, as is for every company.
Yeah.
And you have to make sales. You have to bring in cash. And I remember because, I was almost looking for a sales team to like give this to give the responsibility to. I know that sounds, but the way it came out is, I'm a metrics driven guy, right? I'm an accountant by trade. So I love producing spreadsheets, and I would produce the spreadsheets of like, okay, I'm going to track my metrics, how many calls I'm making, emails I'm sending, Facebook ads, like whatever I was doing to market my business and create leads. I created the spreadsheet, and it's awesome. I'm telling you right now, it's a pretty cool spreadsheet, right? Here's the thing though, I would never open it.
Yeah.
I would never open it. And there were two reasons. One is I think I had this corporate mentality of like, somebody else should be doing that or taking care of that. And the second thing from a mindset perspective is I was kind of scared of the story it was telling me. I was like fearful of this spreadsheet, of this sales thing that I wasn't really used to. And it was finally when I made a decision that, no, I own the sales process. I am the sales guy. Yeah. I've got to be able to look at my data, and it's not a judgment on me if things are going well or if they're going poorly. All it is information that I need to make a decision about what actions I need to take as a business owner going forward.
Yeah.
So for me, that shift was huge. Just adopting that ownership mentality in so many different ways. I could go on and on.
I love that. So I want to pull a couple things out of here. it's that shift from corporate to being a business owner. It's really about responsibility, right? If it's to be, it's up to me, right? You are now manning the ship, and frankly, you have the power and the ability to shift much quicker than you do in a corporate environment in most cases. But being able to take on that responsibility, I think, is a huge thing. The other thing I want to pull out of this, which is really interesting, is the numbers. Don't be afraid of the numbers, because the numbers aren't a reflection on you, or us. The numbers empower you to make better decisions. It's like, hey, I'm making 10 outreaches a week, but I'm only getting, a certain number of calls on the books. Well, okay, now for every 10 outreaches, I get 1 call or 2 calls. And then you can start to work backwards and go, okay, well, if I want to do X amount of business, these are the leading indicators that I need to track. And these are the activity. This is how much of each of these activities I need to do to accomplish my goals. So they're really empowering. So don't be afraid of them.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, I mean, I grew up playing baseball, and it's a game based on failure, right? So you fail 7 out of 10 times, which means you're successful 3 out of 10. So I have a 300 batting average. If you're at the highest level and you maintain that, you're going to the Hall of Fame. Right? That's the reality. Yeah. Well, so I played this game based on failure, but what's interesting though is how do we perceive that number, right? So 1 out of 10, we could see that as a massive failure. And even me, having played baseball and done fairly well in the corporate world and, launching this business, it was me creating this awareness of like, what thoughts and beliefs and emotions am I experiencing around those numbers? Because that's what's getting in my way. It's not the numbers itself. I'm scared to look at them because I believe I've failed. Because 1 out of 10 is in alignment with some random belief that I've come up with, right? Yes. It says I should be getting 9 out of 10. Well, maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. To your point, let's look at it as just a piece of information and be like, okay, cool. So now to your point, if I do 100 outreaches, I'm going to get 10 potential, right? So it just becomes like, okay, cool. So how do I make those 100 happen? So that I can be successful that time. So it's that, but until you actually take a step back and understand like what's the emotion, what's the thought behind that. Yeah. You'll constantly battle that over and over and over again. And it sucks the life out of you. Yeah. Yeah. So let's dig into your passion, about mental toughness. Why are you so passionate about it? When I think back to my athletic career, as you progress up the ranks, you start finding that the obviously competition level raises as you go up the ranks. But what you also find, and what I discovered, is like the athletic ability of the individuals that keep progressing up, it's pretty comparable, right? So you're at the high school level, and like the best kids are going to come out of high school with the best ability, and they're going to go to the collegiate level, right? Or JUCO level, whatever. And then out of that, then they're going to go to the professional ranks, right? The top kind of tier out of that. Well, you're getting kind of the same physical skill set. I can hit a baseball, right? At the highest level, everybody can hit a fastball. That's just reality. Yeah. So thinking back to my athletic career and kind of studying these professional athletes, what I've discovered is that the only difference, right? And there's freaks of nature, like the LeBron James of the world and Michael Jordans, and like those type of guys. Sure. They're just like, whoa, like they're a whole different level. But in general, like when you see these individuals kind of separate themselves, it's what's going on in their heads. It's the study that they put on. It's the development that they do on a daily and consistent basis with themselves, and a discipline that they implement. That's what gets them to separate. Right. Okay. And I've kind of studied this and noticed this, and also these individuals' willingness to look inside and the courage it takes to look inside and continue to do that, to figure out where really am I at? What is getting in my way? What excuses am I making? What beliefs do I still have buried down deep that I need to deal with because I want to get to the Super Bowl. I want to get to the World Series. I want to sign the big contract, right? In business, I found the same exact thing. It's the ones willing to dive inside and figure out, how do I strengthen my mindset? How do I become more resilient? How do I shrink the time gap? Because this is the way I describe mental toughness, right? All we're doing is shrinking a time gap from getting off track to getting back on. It's that simple. So the quicker I can get back on track, the better off I'm going to be. So we all have things that are derailing us, right? Well, maybe something's derailing you for 5 days. Well, if you train yourself, if you surround yourself with great people who can help you, that 5 days becomes 5 hours, and now it becomes 5 minutes, and now it becomes 5 seconds. So no matter what comes your way, you're just reacting in a positive way and taking action, looking at that as just a piece of data that you can use to move forward and make that pivot and adjustment.
So it's not about not getting off track. We're all going to get off track. It's about when you get off track, how quickly can you get back on track?
Yes. There's this misconception. When I gave a speech yesterday, a virtual speech, and what I led with is it's like this definition of being mentally tough, right? Well, what I started with was, what is it not? What is it not? We have to have this counterintuitive thinking, right, in business. And what I talked about was like what we learn as athletes growing up. And I think this is the same thing we learn in business. There's this concept of like, if I'm mentally tough, I can never show weakness. I can never let my emotions get the best of me. I can, never have a bad day. And I look at that, and that's what I grew up with, right? Bury it. Never show that something's bothering you, right?
Yeah.
Never let anybody know that your competition is under your skin. And we're taught as males and females, but males were super good at this. Like,
right, yeah.
PhD in it. But women do it too, right? But it's like, I'm going to tuck this away in a dark, dark place where no one's ever going to find out.
Yeah.
And being mentally tough is the complete opposite of that. Weakness is good. Having a bad day is a good thing. Having a bad moment is a good thing, because what we talked about earlier, it's a piece of information that then we can choose to look at and figure out, like, what do I want to do with that thing?
Right.
Right. If I'm have this belief that, business is painful and money doesn't grow on trees, and making more money is related to the number of hours that I work. Well, that may or may not be true in your mind, but for others, they have different beliefs. So are you willing to actually challenge those things and say, wait a minute, maybe I can rewire my subconscious brain a little bit and figure out that maybe money does grow on trees, right? Or maybe I can have such efficient systems and processes that, wow, I don't have to work 24 hours a day, right? And get no sleep. So it's those types of things that get me so fired up and excited, because, you see this, Tim, right? You're coaching this from the marketing perspective, right? A lot of the stuff comes easy to you, but when working with clients, I imagine that they're like, oh my gosh, there's huge mountains in front of me. Yes. I don't know what to do, and this Facebook thing is confusing, and Instagram, and I got TikTok. Should I be on TikTok or should I not be on TikTok? What's the president going to do with TikTok? And like, all these different things are going on, and from a coaching perspective, you're able to take a step back and be like, wait a minute, pause. Let's simplify. Let's figure out like what we need to do to move past that thing, because there are ways to do it. So I get fired. Yeah, well, you can tell I get fired up about this concept of mental toughness and being resilient and getting on track.
So I've got a follow-up question to this. I think with marketing, we always focus on the fundamentals first, because the fundamentals lay the foundation for your marketing house, or whatever you're doing. I don't care what the fundamentals are. This as well as anybody. In baseball, you can't step up and hit a major league fastball until you get the fundamentals down. Yeah. You have no chance of being successful without the fundamentals. Yes. Are there fundamentals that we should be aware of with mental toughness that are going to lay that foundation to help us get back on track faster when we do get off track?
Yeah. So there are a couple that I'll mention, right? Because first of all, from a mental toughness perspective, you have to start with the end in mind, right? It's a huge piece. One thing that I do with all my clients, and it's like literally one of my non-negotiables that we start with every single time, is this concept of called building your stand. And it's diving into kind of your core. It's what are the principles and values guiding your life? What are the actions and reactions and behaviors that are defining your daily decisions? It's kind of putting this North Star out there and saying, this is the person I want to be. This is how I want to show up. This is the impact I want to have in this world. So it's very focused on like this action that I want to take. But getting very clear on like, this is where I'm going. This is the path I'm choosing. And these are the actions that I need to take to actually make it happen, right? Because it's great to dream about like, oh, I want a nice car, I want a nice house, or I want a business that's self-sufficient, whatever. But we have to show up as the best kind of version of ourselves, the best CEO of our business, right? And of life, if we want to make that happen. So that's where I review every day, and I've got it on my right in front of me here that I have in my little journal where I read that on a daily basis to make sure I'm starting with the end in mind, and I'm showing up as the person, ultimately that I want to be. That's one like key thing. The second thing that I talk about all the time is we have to become like super aware of what's going on in our head. And I'm kind of old school, Tim, to be honest, where I believe in writing stuff down. And there's really cool science behind like, typing stuff out versus writing it down versus, teaching it eventually and all that stuff as far as like retention. But the simple practice of when you feel like you're spinning, of getting out a piece of paper or a journal or something like that and just getting it out on paper. Not talking it out, but getting it out on paper. Because it's almost like it makes it real at that point. And you can assess your situation for what it is. It's almost like looking at a Word document or a spreadsheet or something like that to say, let me assess what's going on. And I had one of my clients call me one day and he's like, man, I'm so wrapped up in my head. I don't know what's going on. And I didn't spend more than 2 minutes on the phone with him. I said, we're done talking right now. I need you to stop what you're doing. I need you to pull out your journal, and I need you just to get out on paper what's going on. And he called me like 30 minutes later and he's like, I'm good, got things sorted out. And off we go, right? But we all spin. I spin. I mean, we all spin. Again, it's just how quickly can I stop the spinning to see something that I can actually, act upon. So it's fundamentals like you were saying, just simple things done consistently. That's what
how much do you think self-awareness plays into mental toughness?
Oh, it's huge. It's like the key. Self-awareness has a direct correlation like your confidence level. Yeah. So like when I talk about being mentally tough too, like I talk about what it's not, but then I talk about what is it, right? So I talk about the mental toughness it's showing up confident, that you're focused, you have emotional control, you've got the energy you need to perform your best, and you're focused on taking consistent action on a daily basis. So that's what being mentally kind of tough is. Well, self-awareness, like I said, it's right on confidence. So you have the courage and confidence in yourself to look in the mirror and have that honest discussion. Are you willing to write those things down? See what you're dealing with. Are you willing to dive into those beliefs? It's all like confidence related. Yeah,
because it seems like, in that example of your client calling saying, man, I'm just stuck in my head. Having the self-awareness to recognize that and go, okay, I'm stuck in my head. What's the next thing that I need to do to get back on track here? Right. And so it's having the awareness of the emotions, what's going on within you, so that you can actually take a step back and go, okay, this happens. Here's what I need to do now.
When you think about it, part of his process and what I teach people is like, there's all sorts of resources that are out there. And a resource might be a person, it might be a document, it might be a report, it might be, who knows, lots of resources out there. So you've got this arsenal of weapons that you can pull from, right? Or tools in your toolkit. Like you've got all these things at your disposal. In that moment of self-awareness, which one are you going to pick? Which one are you going to use? And I'll point out for this client that his first step was to call me. So in his arsenal I happen to be his coach. That's great. It could be a coach. It could be a friend. It could be a coworker. It could be your marketing guy, right?
Right. Whatever it is.
Whatever. But think about it, just the courage it took for him to pick up the phone, just to call me. I mean, that's a confidence thing of like, hey, I'm not in the right place.
Right.
And I can't pull myself out. It took me 2 minutes to pull him out. So it's even that side of things of like, it's great to be spinning. It's great to know you have these tools, but then to have the courage and confidence to say, I need help, or I'm going to use this tool. I'm going to take whatever step I need to accelerate me getting out of this funk, because that's what it's all about.
I think another thing to pull out here, which is really important, because you've talked about this a couple of times, asking for help. I struggle with this sometimes, where it's, hey, I'm asking for help. It shows weakness. It's actually the exact opposite.
Sure.
Asking for help shows strength and confidence. Just saying, hey, you know what? I don't know. I need help. Can you please help me? You really are coming from a place of strength, not weakness, when you do that.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I asked a former boss of mine that I had a long, long time ago. We were just talking about advice that had been given. He goes, yeah, probably the best advice I received one time was, when you screw up, never say sorry. And I remember hearing that, and I was like, what? I'm like, so you screw something up and you don't like take ownership of that, like what you screwed up? It's like, no, that to me is not a confident position. That's a fake courage that you're trying to portray, or like a cockiness. I'm like, no, to your point, like I believe when you like own like what's going on and ask for help and do those things and even say you're sorry in certain circumstances, like that's true confidence. That's vulnerable. That's being vulnerable. That's being real.
Yes.
And that's what we need more of in this world of like, messed up.
Yeah.
Or I need help. Like newsflash, I don't know everything. Like I need people I need people to hold me accountable. Like that we need more of that in this world.
Yeah, I totally agree. And more responsibility.
Yeah. Take
responsibility for your actions. It goes back to what we talked about in the beginning. You have to take responsibility if you are going to be successful as an entrepreneur. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about struggles. We all have them. What are some of the common themes you see business owners struggling with? And what are some of the things that we can do to overcome those?
Yes. So good. This is a powerful question. And again, so many things, but the first thing we talked a little bit about is shifting the mindset to taking full ownership, and not to beat a dead horse on that. But let's talk about the marketing aspect of it. And I've done this in the past, where when you work with a marketing partner, when you initially engage someone, it's not seen as a partnership. It's seen as throw it over the fence and Tim, you take it. Like just do it. Like market my stuff, make me money. And business owners tend to like separate themselves and be like, well, the marketing person's doing that. Well, that's because that's not my expertise. Like the marketing person's doing that. And again, I challenge business owners, especially because sales and marketing it's everything in your business, right? It opens up all the possibility, the growth, the new things you want to do, and new products you want to launch. So take ownership in that. Look at it as like a true partnership with that marketing person, where you're holding each other accountable to deadlines, and you're asking questions of, hey, like, here's the funnel that I'm thinking of creating. What do you think? How do we create it best? How do we tweak it? It's like being engaged in that process and not throwing it over the fence. Because going back to my corporate world, it's like, oh, the marketing people have that, and the sales team has that, and the accounting people are over there doing their thing. It's like, no. Like, be engaged, be curious about what your people are doing.
Yeah.
The sole focus of like, it's not about you, it's about them. Like, how do I need to show up for my marketing team? Even if they're a third party, it doesn't matter. And I've engaged them separately. How do I show up so that they're going to be successful?
Yeah.
So we all win in this situation. So that's a big thing of just like, look at maybe where you're trying to throw stuff over the fence, and maybe shift your mindset to one of curiosity and learning about that. So that's one thing. The other thing, which I find interesting, I was talking to my wife about as well, is this concept of corporate time versus entrepreneur time. And this is something that, ingrained in me. And when you start your own business, I had this mentality of like, okay, I got to work, 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or, famous song, working. I won't start singing, but working 9 to 5. But
Yeah.
terrible. Sorry. It was going fine until I started singing. But it's this, again, the kind of corporate mentality, and where I see a lot of business owners struggle is like, you have to be there for a certain period of time, generating a certain amount of activity based on these hours that you have during the day. And I take this different shift where it's like, okay, you may need to work 1 hour today, 4 hours, 20 hours today. I don't know. But let's start again with the end in mind. And what are the value generating activities that you need to focus on that are going to get you towards those results, right? So it's not like, it's a shift in mentality of like, I've got to work these certain hours to I've got to crank and on these things they're going to drive my business forward. It's a significant shift where even I still catch myself to this day, 8 years later into this business, sometimes being like, oh, it's 8 o'clock. I better go to oh, wait a minute. Do I really need to go to the office? What am I working on today?
Right.
Am I prepared for the day? So I know I'm not just sitting here like, looking at my Facebook ads and refreshing, the ads, refreshing, like, oh, did anybody opt in the last 30 seconds? It's like, how do I structure my day in a way where I know at the end of the day, I'm like, whether it was 5 hours or 20 hours, I kicked some behind today. I did some good things. I squeezed the value out of it. That's another big thing that I think entrepreneurs just have to be careful of.
Yeah, I think it's so easy to get distracted by all the noise, all the things that we have to do. And it really comes back down to, if we're going to move the needle, we have to focus on the most essential tasks, projects that are going to help us get to that end goal.
Yep.
Right. And that is easier said than done.
It is. And I had a conversation, was this 2 days ago? Because probably like a lot of your listeners, like we invest in programs for, online launches that we're doing just to educate ourselves and learn and kind of dive into different processes and ways of launching and stuff like that. And I was talking with the founder of one of these programs, and I was just making a comment about how, like, when you launch like an online program or you start a new business, there's certain passions behind doing that, right? There's certain things that we all love to do. Like, I love to create. I love to look at people, like what they're going through, and my kind of strength and can be a weakness is that I'm like, oh, I'll go create a program on that, and I know exactly how to tackle this, and I'll go launch this and launch that. So I've got this creative energy and juice going, but if I'm not careful, then I won't like maximize what I've already launched, right? I won't.
Yeah.
So I'm on to the next thing too quickly. And so even talking with this owner, like one of the benefits of this kind of program we're going through right now is it's kind of caused me to have this more discipline in saying, okay, that's great. I can go solve that, but have I maximized this first? At least pause and say, maybe not yet. I'll go do that next thing.
Yeah.
Put on a not yet board or something. But let's focus on maximizing this, staying in my lane, making sure I'm showing up for this kind of thing I've already done, where at least if I walk away from that or shift to something else, either A, I give it to somebody else to run, or B, if I kill it, I know I've done everything to kind of maximize that potential, if you will.
Yeah. Well, and if you haven't found the way to be successful with that first thing and you're moving on to the next, how are you going to be successful with the next thing?
Yeah.
Right? Because, I feel like most things in business success all come back down to frameworks, proven models. They're all out there.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of finding the one that's right for you and where you're at, and then executing on it, and yes, we got into business because we're passionate about what we do and we want to help as many people as we can. So it's so easy to go, yep, created this, done, let me move on to the next thing. But man, if I didn't maximize and learn everything I could from this first thing, how am I going to make this second thing successful?
Yes. It's huge. Yeah. I used to drive because I've used some of my marketing partners before and stuff as well. And I know I drove them nuts because I'd call him back, hey, we got to launch this thing. And like, when do we need to launch? Like tomorrow. And because it's like fire and passion comes out, right? It's like, we got to do it tomorrow. Well, it's like, there's a ton of work potentially to do that. And then they work really hard. We get it up. And then the next week I'm on like, okay, we got to launch this other thing. Forget that thing. Let's go on to the next thing. But that's what I love about accountability, is for people to challenge me to say, wait, whoa, Matt, like,
pump the brakes.
Well, pump the brakes, man. Like, I love you, man. I love the passion, but you got to take a step back, man. Like, we haven't maximized this funnel or this ad or this thing. So it's that discipline. And for me, even to take a step back and let my ego go and be like, I know best, do what I want. It's no, what I've engaged these people for a reason. Like, I'm going to ask questions about it, but okay, how do we maximize this? You're right. Let's take a step back.
Yeah.
That goes back to that confidence. And am I willing to kind of, I don't know, be vulnerable to that?
Yes. That's awesome. Matt, I really appreciate the time, the information. You shared a ton of really great tips. Where can people learn more about you, Pro Athlete Advantage? And yeah, if you guys are struggling with something, I certainly highly recommend you reach out to Matt, because I know he can do a great job helping you get to where you want to be.
Yeah, I know. And I appreciate that. And obviously, proathleteadvantage.com, you kind of check out what I do and how I do it. And I was telling Tim before we got on that on my website, or also that this other link that we'll provide you, it's actually on the screen now, is a link to this free training on one of the concepts that I teach to my professional athletes, to my, big time entrepreneurs, C-suite executives, another like kind of key concept. And it's around what I call your I am statements. And so we put a link there because check it out. It's literally the training I give, a video handout, and it's something you can implement that I know will open up possibilities of something, again, I do and I recite on a daily basis. With this training, there's one thing I'll touch on real quick, Tim, is like, when I'm doing business coaching, when I'm doing kind of leadership coaching, when we're talking about mental toughness, where I like to dive in, and what's in this training is some science behind the way your brain works, because this is another thing that gets me fired up about like the mental toughness thing, is like, we are way more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. And the supercomputer we have in our head, and the complexity of like just our entire body, it's amazing if you just take a step back and understand some of the science behind it. So I explain some of that, in the training, but at a high level, like, we've got this one part of our brain called the reticular activating system, the RAS. It's the filter between the subconscious and conscious mind. And I go into this in the training. And it's, there's a saying, I don't know if you've heard this at all, but bad things happen in threes. I don't know if anyone's ever heard that phrase before. But when one thing goes wrong, inevitably another thing happens, then the third thing happens, right? Well, our conscious mind, like what we're aware of, is driven by our belief system, right? And our history and what we've grown up with. Well, this RAS, its entire job is to pay attention to where your intentions are at, what your belief is, and show you data to your conscious mind of like the truth of what you believe. It's just not emotional, not saying, oh, Matt, bad things don't happen in threes. It's just saying like, oh, Matt believes this. So one thing went wrong. I'm going to go search the subconscious mind, show you the second thing. I'm going to show you the third thing, even if it's the tiniest thing. My coffee's too cold, right?
Yeah.
That's the third thing that went wrong. Well, that's the power of the brain. So the question is like, how do you want to set your filter? I'm a simple guy.
Yeah.
I want to set my filter to look for the possibility, to look for the opportunity, to look for the good, to look for, I don't know, the answer that I don't know what's coming yet, or am I gonna like give into the beliefs that are kind of holding me back? So that's what this training is about. It goes a little more in depth into the RAS a little bit, but that's why I wanted to provide it. Is like, you have to understand the power of the brain and body and the impact it can make. And that's why I integrate it into everything that I do, whether you're dealing with an employee, trying to grow your business, trying to market something differently, trying to look at your accounting, for goodness sake. It's like, there's a belief in there about accounting.
Yeah.
But we can get past that, I promise. That's a lot of cool
I love it. So we'll put that, we've got a bit.ly link. Take advantage of that free mindset training. We'll put that in the show notes so that you guys have it. Matt, I really appreciate you taking the time. For people that are watching, listening, thank you for tuning in. Again, I'm Tim Fitzpatrick with Rialto Marketing. If you want to gain clarity on where to focus your marketing efforts right now, pop on over to our website at rialtomarketing.com. That's RIALTO marketing.com. Click the Get a Free Consult button. I guarantee you will get a ton of value from that, and you'll walk away knowing exactly where you need to focus right now to grow your business. Remember, marketing your business should not be a challenge. All you need is a plan. Until next time, take care.